I was all pumped up at the beginning of the year. Now it's gone. Why is motivation just not enough for me to actually, accomplish what I want to accomplish? We've all been there, right? That we've told ourselves like, oh, I'm not really in the mood today. I don't feel like it today. I'll do it tomorrow. Like we always have this vision that our future self, our self tomorrow is going to be more motivated than we are today.
Oh, I'm not as smart as that person. And the truth is that, it's not about being smart or being naturally talented.
I'm joined here in the Global Studio, first of all, by the most lekker teacher in all of South Africa, the one and only 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗶𝗳𝗍. How's it going, 𝗥𝗲𝗹?
I'm doing well, thanks, Ethan. How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
2 thumbs up.
And of course, by our one and only 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗶𝗀𝗹, who is sporting his Guns N' Roses shirt very appropriately this morning or this afternoon. How's it going, Thiago?
Hey, Ethan. Hey, 𝗥𝗲𝗹. I'm doing well. How's it going, guys?
Doing great. In case people couldn't understand by the context, what does sporting something mean when we talk about clothes?
Okay, I can answer that, if you give me a second, because I'm in the dark. To sport something, I don't know if it's coming back. To sport something means to, I don't know, we can't use this. This is ridiculous. Okay. So to sport something is another way to say that you wear something. So if someone sports a particular t-shirt or type of clothing, they are wearing that clothes or clothing.
Yeah, it's a nice variation to say he's sporting that thing.
So guys, check this out. I was reading a study and apparently about 80% of people abandon their New Year's resolutions by February.
Nearly 80% of people admitted to abandoning their New Year's resolutions by February every year. That's according to Forbes.
Meaning that in January, everybody is fully motivated, ready to take on the year. They want to go for those big, crazy dreams. But then, by February, most people, 80%, have already abandoned those resolutions. Alarming, isn't it?
That is really shocking. But actually, when, thinking a bit about it, the thing that happens, is, the new year rolls around. We say in English, even new year, new me, right? But of course, as the weeks go by, you go back to reality, you go back to your job, your hangover from New Year's Eve has worn off. And just like that, the motivation wears off as well that you had. Maybe you signed up for your gym pass, but you're not actually going.
Ethan, you said that your motivation wears off. What does wear off mean? What does it mean if something wears off?
Yeah, so it means it doesn't continue to have effects. So I also said that your hangover has worn off, meaning that, you're not suffering from the pain of your hangover anymore. But we can use it also, so you can use it too for medication, right? That maybe you take some ibuprofen, the ibuprofen wears off, and whatever symptoms you were having come back. So we can say it too, though, for something that's not so tangible, like motivation, that, we're all gung-ho at the beginning of the year, but then as time goes on, if we don't really have good habits in place, it can wear off.
Yeah, that seems to be a fascinating topic, actually. So if you guys watch this until the end today, you will learn some cool things here. For example, you will learn why motivation is not enough to achieve your goals. You will learn 3 simple steps to build powerful habits in your English learning. And finally, we will give you a book recommendation for you to go even deeper on this subject if you want to.
But before we get into today's topic, every week we create lessons and podcast episodes like this one to help you go from feeling like a lost and insecure English learner to being a confident, natural English speaker. So join our community of over 400,000 learners by hitting that subscribe button and bell down below so you never miss any of our new lessons.
And we're really excited because we want to help you really take your goals with your English to the next level, your goals and your habits to the next level this year. So we also have a really cool resource that's going to help you to do that. It's a free PDF that you will find the link to down in the description below. So don't miss out on getting that right now. And that said, let's start by answering everyone's burning question that they surely have if they clicked on this video or are listening to this podcast right now, maybe while they're stuck in traffic or trying to follow through with their New Year's resolutions, which is, I was all pumped up at the beginning of the year. Now it's gone. Why is motivation just not enough for me to actually, accomplish what I want to accomplish?
Yeah, one thing I can say about that, Ethan, is that motivation is too fickle, right? It's fickle, it's unreliable, and that's exactly what happens, right? We can't feel motivated every day all the time. So depending on motivation alone is actually a pretty bad long-term strategy to achieve your goals.
Ooh, I like those words that you used there, some advanced vocabulary. So maybe people know what unreliable means, but I bet fickle might be a new one for them. So what do those words mean, Kase?
So when something is fickle, when something or someone is fickle, they tend to change quite often. So we can say that the weather is fickle here in Cape Town. One minute it's sunny and the next minute it's raining. So Thiago, what is better than motivation?
Action. Actually, action and doing the work or doing the thing that you have proposed yourself to do. We call it showing up, right? So you decided to do something, so you show up every day and you do a little bit of that thing. This is a much better strategy, actually, than simply just waiting to feel motivated and then take some action.
We've all been there, right? That we've told ourselves like, oh, I'm not really in the mood today. I don't feel like it today. I'll do it tomorrow. Like we always have this vision that our future self, our self tomorrow is going to be more motivated than we are today. But it's very rare that that's actually the case, right? That tomorrow arrives, right? And it's the same thing. Like we want to push it to later. We don't want to actually go to the gym. We don't want to get our grammar book off the shelf. We don't want to go for a run or whatever the case is. So that's, again, it's like you have to find ways to stop depending on motivation and actually show up. So what exactly does show up mean, by the way?
So show up means to actually take the time to be there, like commit to being there. No matter what happens, you're going to do the thing that you had set out to do. So whether that is going to the gym, I'm going to go to the gym. You're actually going to you're going to put on your sneakers, you're going to get in your car, and you're going to go to the gym.
So for example, if you made plans, maybe you have like a blind date, right? Your friend has like a friend who they think would be good for you, right? And you go to the restaurant, you're all excited to meet your blind date, and they don't show up. It means like they made a commitment and they didn't come, they didn't appear. And we even have, there's like another nice like wordplay here that will say like, you could say that they didn't show up, but you could also say they were a no-show. So if someone is a no-show, it means that they don't show up, they didn't follow through with their commitment, right?
Exactly. I was thinking of it in terms of language learning. I think people buy these like really expensive they enroll for courses and they take packages with tutors, and then they don't show up, and they don't realize how not showing up has this sort of negative. You're like, oh no, it's just a couple of it's not that much money. I didn't really lose anything. I just, I got some extra free time. I didn't have to, waste time in that class. But you actually lose when you don't show up. And I think this is the mindset that you need to have, is that, not showing up equals losing, whether it's financially or, in terms of your bigger goal.
Yeah, because, then life kind of happens. Life kind of happens also, yeah? Because, Kase was mentioning students, right? I have experienced that with students so many times. When I start working with our student, we're going to go through that process of identifying what the student enjoys doing, the hobbies and everything. We create a study plan that is aligned with what the student enjoys and likes. And maybe for the first couple months, the student follows that through, yeah? But then, after a while, they just drop it. Right? So life kind of happened. So when we were prepping for today's episode, we were discussing about this, right, guys? I mean, the framework, right? Most people, I guess, they wait to feel motivated first so that then they can take the action, right? Or do the work necessary. What we are proposing in today's episode is actually for you to reverse that order. Focus on doing the thing, even for a little bit every day, because then the motivation will likely come, in some days for you.
Right. That's 100% true. I think it's like a complete mind shift when you can actually like experience this yourself. Like if there's something that you really need to write, or you're really needing to get into the gym, like no one actually like wants to like sit down, stare at their screen or stare at like a blank page and like write something. No one actually wants to go to the gym. Well, there are like some people, but it's like really the exception, right? But like if you actually push yourself to go, you get over that initial hump of like laziness or of lack of motivation. When you actually like get there and you start lifting the weights, or you start writing things on the page, most days you're going to find that the motivation actually comes. You want to keep following through with the sets. You want to keep following through with the writing, for example. If you get your dusty grammar book off the shelf, you might find like you do a couple of exercises and you're like actually start kind of enjoying it. It's like a puzzle, right? So this is exactly what 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗶 is saying, is like you need to shift that in your mind, not wait for motivation to show up, not wait until you actually feel like it, but actually set things up in your life so that, you can show up every single day, so that when that motivation does arrive, that you're able to really ride that wave. But, and I think that this is a big mistake people make too, is that they'll look to like their idols. They look to someone, who's famous, or like you look to someone who's got really great English. Maybe you have like a friend, or, you see like 𝗥𝗥𝗹𝗟 here, like someone who you really admire their English, but you start making excuses for yourself like that person must just be, they're motivated all the time. There's like, something they have that I don't have. But that's not the case. That's just like that person. It's like successful people in general, they're not more motivated than the rest of us are. They show up every day. They do the hard work that needs to be done, or they lift the heavy weights. They're there every single day, or several days a week. They have their routine, right? Because if you're not actually showing up, you can't hope that the results are just going to fall in your lap.
Exactly.
That's so true. And 𝗥𝗲𝗹, you were mentioning something also related to talent, right? Because sometimes we see a person who does something really well, like Ethan was describing, right? Oh, this person is motivated all the time, or this person is extremely talented. That's why that person, is able to do that. But you were sharing with us, 𝗥𝗲𝗹, something interesting about that, right? About talent and your results. Could you share that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So in her book Grit, Angela Duckworth talks about how, a lot of us, for some reason, we look at people who are more successful at, let's say sport, and we think, oh no, they have natural talent. I'm not as skilled or as naturally gifted as they are. And it applies to academics as well. We think like, oh, I'm not as smart as that person. And the truth is that, it's not about being smart or being naturally talented. Of course, those people will reach, certain heights in their career or in that industry or sport. But people who make the effort, as she says, to consistently, continually make that effort to practice, to work on that particular skill or whatever it is that they're trying to improve on, they're the people who, at the end of the day, they might not be the high-ranking executive in the company because of their natural ability, but they could reach that same height because they put in the effort, they put in the time, and they did it consistently. So yeah, you might not be.
I think on the other side of that too, there's a lot of people who they are naturally talented, but they lack like the discipline or they lack like the purpose to actually show up and do the hard work that's necessary to end up getting to that place where their talent would really pay off, and they would have those skills, or they'd have the fame, or they'd have the, as 𝗥𝗲𝗹 mentioned, like the level in the company or whatever the case is. So showing up and like I had this experience myself. Like my brother is a really talented language learner. Like when we were kids, he always got like A's in his Spanish classes. When we went to Mexico on like family trips and stuff, he'd be the person who'd be, we'd be at the store, and he'd be the person who's communicating with the person at the store to ask for something and things like this, like always helping us. And that wasn't me. Like I got like B's, I was never like a bad student, but I never got like exceptional grades in my language classes. I didn't particularly enjoy it. But, I went and I lived abroad. I started getting really fascinated about cultures and much more fascinated about like languages and being able to communicate with people from different places and discovering the world. And so I had this extreme like purpose behind like learning different languages. And my brother doesn't really speak, now if we go on trips, I'm the one who's like speaking Spanish and everything, because I really like built that purpose and everything and put in like the hard work that it takes to learn a language. So, I think that there's so many cases you can find of this. The person who's got that natural talent and stuff, just because they have that doesn't mean that necessarily they're going to be successful. And just because you see someone who is really successful, that doesn't necessarily mean it's because they had a talent. It means because they really, they gave a damn about that thing. They really cared and they put in the hard work that's necessary.
You said something nice there, Ethan. They gave a damn about the thing. When you give a damn about something, what does that mean?
You could also say, like, you could use the F word there if you want to be more emphatic, right?
Right.
But yeah, if you give a damn, it's like you really care about that thing. Or you could even say this about someone like, he doesn't give a damn like what people think of him, right?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
It's that person's like really independent, really confident in themselves.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, these examples you guys are sharing here really illustrates the power of showing up and being consistent with your, with your goals, right? With your habits. Another example I can give here is one of my favorite authors, Stephen King, the American author. Yeah, he is known for being super prolific. At least once a year, the guy
What does prolific mean?
Prolific. I mean, a person who produces a lot. Yeah, especially in terms of art or content, right? The person produces a lot of something. It's abundant, right? And Stephen King is known for being a prolific writer. He's always putting out new books, sometimes one book a year, right? Even more, depending. And then in interviews, people ask him, hey, where do you get your ideas from? Or where do you get your inspiration from, right? But then I have one of his books, his memoir, right, on writing. And he talks about his habits with writing, and he has it as a goal to write 2,000 words per day. Regardless of the day, regardless of how he's feeling, he has to put down on paper 2,000 words per day. And then he says that sometimes on some days, those 2,000 words come very easily for him, and then he's able to finish them in the morning. Yeah. Other days, those words come, it's difficult for those words to come. He might take longer in the day to, get them done, but he gets them done, right? So it's another great example of a guy who has been successful in his area. And it's all about the work ethic, right? Having the habit of doing the work every day.
There's another really great expression in English that's an overnight success, which is someone who becomes successful in a very short amount of time. However, like, when you listen to people, like I've listened to interviews with a lot of people who are considered overnight successes, and this is kind of just something that in general, like the, media likes to like grab these people and stuff and say that they were an overnight success. But when you listen to these people, they usually say that it's not taking into consideration all of the hard work that went into like years of doing that thing, of making mistakes, of failing, of like learning lessons and everything, that, finally it seems like an overnight success because they kind of like built all this momentum, and then all of a sudden, you're kind of seeing them everywhere. But in fact, it's actually something that's coming of a very long effort, like 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟 said, like prolificness of showing up every single day and doing the hard work or training or doing grammar exercises or whatever the case is that goes into what you're trying to do. But, showing up, I think it doesn't have to be this huge overwhelming thing. If like you're wanting to get in shape, for example, you don't need to like carve out 3 hours a week to go to the gym or something like that. You can start much smaller. You're listening to like this podcast, and maybe, a 35-minute podcast, especially if you're like an lower intermediate learner, it might still seem kind of overwhelming. So, you could even just start by just listening to like small chunks, listen to it in 5 minutes while you're having your coffee every morning, just break it up. And one of the best ways you can do this actually is if you're not already listening to this on our app, go check it out on our app, because you can follow along with your transcript. It really like lowers the bar for you. It makes it a lot more practical, a lot easier for you to do that. And, 5 minutes a day, it doesn't seem like much, but, maybe on Monday you learn a new word. On Tuesday, you pay attention to some sort of interesting pronunciation, and, you mimic that. And on Wednesday, maybe, we describe some sort of grammatical point or something like that. And so it helps you to improve at that. So, by actually like showing up, you're building a habit. And then, what we're going to talk about later, you can improve upon that. So to wrap up today's podcast, for the remainder of it, what we wanted to cover was 3 pretty simple but really powerful habits or steps to build habits that are going to help you, with English learning or anything else that you're wanting to do in your life. I'm sure all of you listening have several New Year's resolutions, which maybe you've already fallen short on some of them, but it's not too late. So hopefully these will be helpful for you. So what's the first step, 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟?
It's about identity, we say, right? How you view yourself. I really love what one of our team members, Mate, mentioned in one of our meetings. I think it was this week, yeah? He was talking about reading, right? And then he said, I don't want to read more this year. I want to become a reader, right? So it's this idea of becoming the type of person who does the thing you're trying to accomplish, right? Not focusing on the activity per se, but on becoming, viewing yourself as the person who does that thing. Like, I don't read, I am a reader, right? Do you guys have any other examples about that to illustrate? I mean, this idea of how you view yourself?
I mean, we were talking already about purpose. That's something we've talked about a lot. If you listen to this podcast, how important it is to know what your deep burning purpose is, because like even when you go through, difficult times, it's going to help you to pick up and everything. It'll be, that motivation that you need through the difficult times that do come when you're learning a language. And I think from there, like Thiago was talking about with identity, when you kind of have that clear, that deep burning purpose and everything, it's kind of like your North Star in a sense. And then, your compass, or, the thing that's kind of helping you to climb the mountains and stuff that you need to like get closer and closer to your North Star, is by actually visualizing this identity. So like, I think there's a book all of us have read called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Also something we talk about a lot on this podcast. If you haven't read it, it could be a great goal to add to your 2023. But one of the 7 habits is to start with the end in mind. And like one way you can do this is kind of like imagine, because most people are saying like, oh, I want to be a fluent English speaker, right? Or I want to get to the C1 level. But that's kind of just like a goal, and it's kind of like meaningless, and you can actually spend a little bit more time reflecting about, well, when I have that C1 English, or when I am that like fluent, confident English speaker, what will that mean for me? How will my life change? What are the things I'm going to be doing? Who will I hang out with? Where will I live? Kind of like thinking about all these different things, like really getting clear in your mind, like who is that person? Who is that future version of me? Who's this successful, confident English speaker? And what is their life like? Because when you do that, then you can start like working backwards to figure out, okay, how do I get there? How do I start making decisions as if I already were this person? Or there's like another great TED Talk that we've mentioned before. We can put in the show notes. But and now the woman's name's failing me. Maybe Thiago remembers. But she talks about fake it until you make it, right? So you can start acting like that person you want to become, even though at first it might feel uncomfortable. And if you keep, kind of faking it, even you kind of like lean into that discomfort, eventually you are eventually going to be that fluent, confident speaker, right?
Yeah, I think it's Cuddy, the speaker.
Cuddy, that's it.
Yeah.
So we'll whack that in the show notes. And Casa, you had like a really great example too. I think when you were studying journalism, right? You said from one of your professors.
Yeah, that's right. So I love what you said about faking it until you make it, which is exactly, what the point was of the story that I shared with you. So basically, when I was, a journalism student, we had this amazing lecturer, and he was just like everything we all aspired to be. So we wanted to be like Charles King. He was just such a good speaker. He was just such a good journalist, right? And so, when we had our first class with him for our first class of the semester, what he said to us like stuck with me. He said, if you want to be a writer, if you want to be a journalist, don't worry about finding the best stories. Just write. He says, like, do the work consistently and you'll become a journalist. And this speaks to the point that you just made, which is that, if you sort of envision yourself, you know what you want, you found your purpose, you know that this is what you want to do. You have to get through that weird insecurity of feeling like, okay, maybe I'm not good enough. Oh, who will hire me? Oh, this person's better than I am. Just keep at it, and you will reap the benefits of that hard work and that effort.
We have like the advice of kings today, because you said Charles King and we mentioned Stephen King, and both of them are saying like, just sit down and, write the thing, just show up.
Yeah, it's possible that Charles King might have like ripped off. I'm kidding. Sorry, Charles, if you're listening. Not saying you ripped off.
Wouldn't it be amazing if Charles King is listening to this, or Stephen King?
Oh wow! Oh, my gosh.
That'd be super. Yeah, but even bringing that TED Talk that Ethan mentioned just now, Cuddy's TED Talk. Yeah, she even mentions. She says the phrase at the end: "Fake it until you become it." Yeah. So it's really about that. Yeah? Becoming the type of person who does that thing.
we kind of like hinted at this earlier, but like the next step is to standardize it. So what does that mean if you're standardizing something?
Yeah, at first you're not worried so much about the results yet. You're not looking to gain, a crazy amount of results right away. You are just focusing at first on developing the system, the habit of consistently doing that thing. And you can start really small,
Teeny
with
tiny.
2 minutes, 5 minutes. That's pretty much what it is about. You are just getting the system down, getting the habit down, right? Just to give you guys an example, I mean, I'm trying to be a little bit healthier this year, right? In terms of, eating habits and also exercise. But, I know that if I start going crazy with the habits, like, oh, I got to go to the gym for 1 hour every day, I'm not going to follow through it, I need to build the system first. And so I'm starting to do simple things. For example, I live in a short building that has 4 floors, right? I live on the 4th floor. I have the elevator and I have the set of stairs. Now, I've been just taking the stairs. I told myself, I'm not going to take the elevator. I'm developing this habit first of just taking the stairs, not taking the elevator, to go up and down. And then once I get that down, I'm going to move on to the next stage. Okay, what else can I do? Yeah, well, maybe I can go for a 5-minute walk on the street, And then you keep, implementing it like that little by little until you come to a point where, yes, you are working out 3-4 times a week for 1 hour. Yeah, but it's like you are easing into it first. You are warming up to the activity first.
I like that example too, because, it's not something big and crazy. A lot of people might even think like, oh, that's meaningless. Like, who cares if you go up the stairs? But the thing is, like you were saying, is like you want to become a healthier person. So you start doing things that a healthy person would do, right? You're kind of like ask yourself like, okay, I live on the 4th floor. What would a healthy person do? Would they take the elevator or would they take the stairs? A healthy person would take the stairs, right? And that's something that can start like trickling into other areas of your life. You could, maybe you're going out to lunch with some friends to like a hamburger place and you ask yourself, okay, well, I have 2 options. I have a hamburger or I have a salad. What would a healthy person order? Well, they order the salad. I want the burger, but I'm trying to become a healthy person, so I'm going to order the salad. And by making like these decisions, these good decisions all the time, or like not even good decisions, because like maybe sometimes you do really want to enjoy a hamburger, but making these decisions that are in line with the kind of person that you want to become, then by doing it, little by little, you are going to start seeing yourself more as a healthy person. And then that allows you also to take bigger steps because, you see yourself as the person who goes up the stairs, the person who has a salad instead of a hamburger. And then you could be like, well, I think I'm also like the kind of person who could go to the gym a few times a week, or who could go for a run at my, around my local park or something like that. So it kind of allows you to, like, as you said, to kind of raise the bar little by little, right? But instead of like giving yourself this big goal, like, oh, it's 2023, going down the gym, I'm going to sign up for a membership and everything. And you go for like 1 month maybe, but then, life happens, as Thiago was saying earlier, and you give up. And then you're just going to be disappointed with yourself because you're going to feel like a failure, right? Instead of like starting small, feeling successful with little things, and then, working your way into that. And I think it's the same thing that we were saying earlier, right? Is that when it comes to learning English, you don't need to go and sign up for like some 6-month course or something like that. You don't necessarily need to like sign up for a certificate. Start with what you have. I think the important thing is like, just get started, just do something.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying here, Ethan, also about the systems, right? Because if you don't have the systems in place, it falls apart. And this idea of identity. For example, in my case with English, I wanted to become an English speaker. And then I thought to myself, okay, what would an English speaker do? Speak, right? If I want to speak English, I got to speak. Any chance I get. So back in my hometown, whenever I found a tourist or a foreigner in a coffee shop, for example, that, spoke English or who wasn't Brazilian, I would make sure I approach that person to have a 4 or 5 minute conversation just to practice my English, So that was kind of a habit of mine. It was a system of mine. Whenever I see somebody who is not Brazilian, I'm going to approach that person and have a short conversation. But the cool thing is that nowadays, even if you don't live in a big city like I did when I was learning English, you have so many cool resources nowadays, like our app, You don't even have to go to a coffee shop nowadays to do it. You can just, open the app, the Real Life English app, and have a 4-minute conversation there with someone. You know, it's a great way to practice your speaking. So we are talking about standardizing your habits, right? And starting small first. Maybe you can start by committing yourself to having a 4-minute conversation per day. That's it. Okay, I'm going to have a 4-minute conversation on the app per day. And that's it. You have the conversation, you're done for the day. And then you keep doing that for a while, and then pretty soon you're going to want to have 2 conversations, 3 conversations, or even more, right? So yeah, that's the idea. Starting
But I think
small.
the important thing there too is like, you don't have to, right? That you can do, even if you just do 4 minutes, it's like, that's success. I showed up today, right? And other days where it's like, you're like, oh, I'm having a great time, I'm meeting nice people, then you can keep going, right? And it's like, either way, you just see yourself as that person who's showing up every day speaking, right? So we are going to get to the last step, right? In the, to help you to build habits. But before we get into that, we have a shout out to a very special app user.
So today's shout out is for Romeo, who says, "'Twas a nice experience to talk with someone here on the app who is also learning English. Thanks to this amazing app, not only can we learn, but also connect and be friends with other people."
Yeah, thanks so much, Romeo. So if you'd like Romeo, also want to take your English to the next level by being able to speak it every single day, fast and easy, meet people from all around the world, then all you have to do is download the Real Life English app now, which you find linked down in the description of this podcast if you're listening, or in the show notes. And it's absolutely free to get started. So why not go and meet your new best friend in another part of the world? Start speaking English.
Thanks, Romeo.
And we have also a shout out to one of our commenters over on YouTube. So Cassie, do you want to do the honors and read that?
Sure. So this shout out goes to Jan, who says, "I would like to thank all of you for all your effort that you put into every single lesson. I love your podcast and your Real Life English app. I don't have any doubt you have built the best English channel." Wow. Amazing.
That is
Thank
just
you.
fantastic. Yeah. So if you want us to shout you out, you can leave a comment down in the description below. Sorry, in the description, down in the comments below, letting us know what you think of the podcast, how it's helped you, anything else nice. You know, we love anyone who likes to stroke our ego, which means anyone who likes to make us feel good. It definitely makes our days a little bit brighter. So we look forward to hearing what you think. And Thiago, we have been teasing the poor listeners for a long time. What is the third step for habit building?
Yeah, after you've gone through the process of working on your identity, how you view yourself, and then standardizing it by doing, a little bit every day, then you optimize it. That's the third step, yeah? One point that I think about when I think of optimizing is, for example, increasing the time. Yeah, once you start doing the 2-minute thing, 5-minute thing every day, right? After a while, when you get the habit down, then okay, now I think I can expand the time a little bit more to 15 minutes or half an hour or even 1 hour, right? That is one side of optimizing. I think Cassie has another side to talk about, right, Cassie, about optimizing it. So aside from expanding the time you do something, what else can you do to optimize your habit?
So when you optimize a habit, what you're doing is ultimately taking it to the next level. So for example, to continue with the gym example, going to the gym initially, like Thiago mentioned, you could first you're going up the stairs, then you eventually work your way into the gym and you're going for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I don't know how long you want to spend there. You're gradually, as Thiago mentioned, becoming comfortable with this new habit. But when you're optimizing it, you're taking it to the next level. Now you're focusing on particular areas that you want to improve. Maybe you want to build, bigger biceps, or you want to strengthen your back muscles so you look like a hunk on the beach next summer. I don't know. So
What's a hunk?
really,
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing. Thank you, Ethan. What's a hunk, Cassie?
Well, if you're a guy, a hunk is someone who is super attractive. A hunk is just someone who is super good looking, and people are usually impressed with your physical appearance. So that would be a hunk.
The version for like a woman might be a babe. At least that's what we say in the States.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to look like a hunk or a babe next summer, you might want to, work on certain parts of your body. You're already in the habit of working out, but now you want to become better overall. When it comes to English learning, I like the example that I used earlier. You're already able to read, but you're not really understanding much vocabulary. You're still having difficulty with understanding news, for example, reading a news article. So at this stage, you shouldn't go to studying Shakespeare, because you might not be at a level where you're ready for that. So when you're optimizing, you're gradually working your way up to doing those things that are, a lot more challenging and would take a lot more time. So as you said, increasing the time, but also working your way towards the bigger, more challenging tasks.
I think in the gym it's good because it's like, it might be like more weight or more difficult exercises, right? And with English, maybe it's like, more deliberate practice. So, instead of just watching a TV series, maybe you're actually going back over the same part a couple times to like really listen into like how exactly they say that and trying to repeat it yourself exactly how they said it. That could be like one example. But if you have the habit of like watching a 15-minute show every single day, that's already like a pretty good habit, and you could just like activate it, right? One problem people can fall into, though, especially people who tend to have very high standards for themselves, they can fall into the perfectionism trap, which we've talked about perfectionism before in past episodes. We can certainly link to that in the show notes. But one of the really important things here is like, if you're starting really small, if you're starting by going up the steps, or you're starting just by going to the gym 5-10 minutes a day, or you're starting just by doing a few grammar exercises, and then you kind of you're increasing the time, you're doing harder exercises and everything. If there's one day where it's like, you're really busy, life is happening to you and everything, as we said earlier, don't, let perfect be the enemy of good. That's like an expression. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. What you should do, on those days, if you're like really having a hard time getting to the gym, or you're really having a hard time finding the time to study, it's like reduce the scope, which means just like do less, show up for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, however much time you have. Just because you can't do it for an hour, do as much as you can. And the important thing is just like, again, you're reinforcing your identity as a person who shows up every single day to do it. So the book we're actually going to mention from James Clear, this is a quote that we just listened to a podcast of his, an interview that's super fascinating. If you want to go deeper on this topic, we can definitely link that as well in the show notes in the description. But yeah, he says this, like, reduce the scope, stick to the schedule. So like, make sure that you're still showing up every single day, or the days that you're doing that habit, but do it for less time if there's like a certain day you really can't do it, because the important thing is that you're actually showing up. When you don't show up, then everything can fall apart. It's pretty quick for, you skip one day because one thing happened, you skip another day because, another thing happens, and then, you're kind of reinforcing more the identity rather than someone who shows up. You're reinforcing identity as someone who skips when life gets hard, right? So we really don't have much time to talk about optimization. We wanted to give you a lot more juicy tidbits. So if you want those, we could do an entire podcast episode on that, really. So if you want that, let us know down in the comments below. If enough of you ask for it, we will certainly do an episode on that. So that said, Thiago, why don't you do the honors of like drum roll of the book that we're going to suggest? Probably a lot of listeners might already know what's coming, or might have already
we're going to have to ask Thiago to add it. Yeah. So guys, the book that we want to recommend today, it's a great book, and actually a lot of these ideas that we discussed today come from that book. Is the book called Atomic Habits from James Clear, who Ethan just, he was talking about. So, if you want to learn more about, these steps of, identity, standardizing, optimizing your habits, check out the book, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Yeah. And it's a great way already for you to live your English. Yeah? You're doing something in English already.
I was kind of late to the party reading that one. I just read it last year, but definitely, I think it was my favorite book I read last year. And like the one that it's like really well written in a way that I really enjoyed reading it. And like in a way that it's like really easy, that there's already things there that instantly you can apply. A lot of the things that we talked about today, but it's just like the tip of the iceberg, right? So, so thanks so much for joining us here on the Real Life English podcast. We had a lot of fun talking to you all about motivation. And we hope that, if you set some resolutions for this year and you're just not, you're just not being able to rise to the level, hopefully this will help you to get rolling again, or help you to make them more realistic, or help you to start taking baby steps towards it, whatever it is. Just show up. I think it's when it comes to bottom line. So any final words, guys?
And guys, we have that special PDF, prepared for you to help you go deeper in today's topics, to help you develop the habits you need to accomplish the goals you want. Okay, so make sure you download it. Link in the description. It's free. Okay, it's our free gift for you to take your learning further with this episode. Okay.
All right. So thanks so much for joining us, and we hope to see you, hear from you, talk to you soon. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. You are going to learn why proficiency is better than fluency. We will also tell you 3 simple steps to become more proficient in English. And Thiago is going to share his favorite metaphor for language learning.
By the way, spoiler alert, everybody. It has to do with guitar. All right.
All right. So as promised, we're going to be talking a lot about proficiency in today's episode. But